So when a heating system is oversized, you have the first thing is increased system installation costs. Now you have, your higher tonnage on your equipment, which costs more. But you also, when you have a bigger condenser, you need a bigger duct system. A bigger duct system is harder to install, so it's more man hours. And you also have bigger furnace that may be attached to that condenser, and you also have a bigger coil. So the system goes up in cost pretty significantly, kind of in a domino effect as you start adding it all up. You'll also have a short cycling of the condensing equipment outside. And you've all probably seen some of this. Maybe you've been standing outside listening to a condenser, it goes on, stays on for a minute, it goes off. 10 minutes later, it goes on again, doesn't stay on very long. You actually, when a system is working, say at its design temperature, so it's 87 degrees outside and you have it at 75 degrees inside, the system should run constantly, until the temperatures change. But, so you should get a longer run on your equipment if it's sized properly. And that definitely does, short cycling will shorten equipment life. It definitely causes a lot of repair issues down the road. And when I say down the road, it could be 3 months from your new system installation, or it could be 3 years. But ideally, you can get 15 years out of a condenser. So if one dies after 7 years, then something was seriously wrong with the system design. It should not have happened. And oftentimes, manufacturers are blamed on that. They blame the manufacturer, for a compressor failure. And manufacturers hate this. They're aware that this happens, and they know that it's really from bad installation, not so much, faulty compressors that were put in the equipment. So manufacturers will do an awful lot to make sure that contractors are trained and understand, and they certify them so that they understand how to prevent repairs and shorten equipment life. You certainly have decreased efficiency. That's why we're all here, which will increase energy bills. That system is just going to keep working until it can maintain something that it can never maintain. So it's never going to dehumidify the home properly. It will probably cool the home properly, but that humidification issue from oversizing is going to always make that system turn on and off. So it's just like a car. Why do we get better gas mileage on the highway opposed to in the city? Because we just have a constant, speed going on opposed to starting and stopping, starting and stopping. So, you'll increase your energy bills if you don't size properly. You'll increase service calls, moisture problems. Not such a big deal here in the Northeast, but further down south you can have terrible moisture problems because you're just not dehumidifying. Uneven temperatures. Again, this is often misinterpreted as an undersized system when you have one room that's significantly warmer than another room, but it's actually an oversizing situation or outcome. And then occupants feel, maybe look cold and clammy. I mentioned, and this is something that you'll always hear contractors say, contractors that actually understand how to properly size the system right, they'll always use the cold and clammy, and I'm always like, well, what does that really mean? It means that the house is able to cool properly. You can get to maybe the 72 degrees on the thermostat, but again, it can't dehumidify properly. So that moisture tends to stick to the occupants. So I think they not only feel, but they look clammy too. So when we look at a manual J load calculation, what are we actually looking at here? What are the terms that are on there? What do the numbers mean? The first important term is latent cooling load. So what is a latent cooling load? It's heat put into the air by moisture. So obviously there's a lot of people in this room, so the load increased. That's why the air conditioner is kind of running down. The thermostat senses that there's more moisture or there's a higher latent cooling load that it needs to address than it normally would. So people increase your cooling load, equipment and appliances, air infiltration through cracks in the buildings, doors and windows. So the Manual J software actually takes this into account. If you have a home that you're running a Manual J load calculation on that has 5 bedrooms, it's probably going to calculate maybe 8 people living in that house opposed to 4. And air infiltration, again, if you have that type listed, it's going to, affect the load, the latent load, because you have a tight home construction opposed to average. Your sensible cooling load. This is where the bulk of your load comes from. I would say 70% of the load that is required comes from your cooling load. And this is basically the sun heating up the material that the home is built on. As you know, heat molecules move from, hot to cold, so they're constantly beating on that house, trying to get inside to the colder indoor area. This comes through your glass windows or your doors. Sunlight strikes those windows, skylights, glass doors. Your sensible cooling load goes up. Your exterior walls, ceilings under the attic, roofs, all this stuff heats up. And even people in the building will affect your sensible cooling load. Lights will affect your sensible cooling load. So again, by giving that contractor that's designing that system that set of plans, he's going to take into account every window. So, again, getting back to the guy who uses the rule of thumb, saying I've done this house 1,000,000 times, but you have this huge atrium window in the foyer that the sunlight comes through and it just hits the thermostat in the hot heat of the afternoon. That needs to be taken into account, and that load is going to probably be significantly different than the house without the atrium window. So that's why the plans are very important to design off of, opposed to not doing it that way. So here we have our Manual J load calculation. You can see, hold on. On this side, you have your winter design conditions. So this is actually what they use to size furnace and boiler equipment. So just to let you know that that's your winter design, and this side is your summer design. We have our outdoor temperatures. So here was like the Worcester area. We have 87 degrees. And then here we have where's our indoor temperature? 75. So these are your summer design conditions. That's something that your rater is going to be looking at. He's going to verify that you definitely have an indoor temperature of 75, and you have an outdoor temperature probably no higher than 88.